Hey guys, so a couple of you asked for a video on improving your overhead shoulder mobility, and that basically means shoulder flexion. So this movement. And you need that for handstands, any type of pressing, a barbell or dumbbell or anything over your head, pull-ups and muscle-ups. And if you're limited in shoulder flexion, then often other parts of your body are going to have to compensate for that. So often if people are doing pull-ups, you'll see them, if they struggle with this position, then they'll have to bend their elbows. Often when people are pressing a barbell overhead, if they run into a wall with their shoulder flexion, then they have to arch their lower back, and you'll see that in handstand movements a lot as well. And that can eventually lead to injury. So before I show you some exercises to work on shoulder flexion, I'm actually going to show you how to improve your internal rotation in your shoulder. And the reason I'm doing that is because if you have a tight shoulder capsule, then your mobility is going to be limited in your flexion. And a great way to improve your capsular mobility in your shoulder is to improve the internal rotation. So we're going to do that by performing PAILs and RAILs in a sleeper stretch position. So you can take a yoga block or anything really, just to use as a pillow. I set it on the medium height. You can do the low height or the medium height. And then you're going to have let's say have your body on the long edge of the mat. And your elbow is going to come out at 90 degrees or slightly below. Then from here, I'm going to use my other hand to internally rotate my shoulder and just find a stretch. A couple of things to look out for on this is you don't want your shoulder blade too far forward like this. And it doesn't have to be excessively back either, just somewhat neutral position. And then when I'm coming into that stretch, I want to make sure that it actually feels like a stretch and it doesn't feel any pinching or anything going on there. If you do feel pinching, then you can try maybe a different angle and that might get rid of it. But if you just can't get rid of that pinching, then you're not going to be able to perform this stretch. Okay, so if you are able to find a good stretch in this position, then you're going to hold it for about 2 minutes. Just take deep breaths, just relax, see if you can get deeper and deeper into that stretch, and then you're going to do a couple of rounds of PAILs and RAILs in this position. So PAILs is going to be pushing up this way with my wrist, and it's going to be an isometric contraction. So I'm going to hold the arm in place with my top hand and push up and not let it move. Then RAILs is going to be trying to drive my wrist further down towards the ground. If you're more new to this type of mobility training, you can try maybe a 1-minute stretch and then one set of a 15-second PAILs and a 10-second RAILs effort. And that might be really intense for you, but if you're more experienced and you can handle it, then you can go for a 2-minute passive stretch and then 2 or 3 sets of PAILs and RAILs. So once you've worked on your internal rotation to try and improve your shoulder capsule, then we're going to work on some shoulder flexion. And we're going to do PAILs and RAILs for shoulder flexion. So the way I like to set that up is I use 3 yoga blocks and a dowel. And you're going to come into basically like a child's pose position. You're going to take 1 block underneath your chest. You can also use ab mats underneath your chest if you don't have 3 yoga blocks. Then you're going to have 1 block underneath your forehead, and then you're going to have 1 block overhead. Then you're going to take your dowel and you're going to place it on the block that's over your overhead. And then you can rest your chest on 1 block and your forehead on the other block. Make sure on this one, guys, that you keep your elbows locked out. Now from here, I'm just going to try and find a stretch. If you don't feel a stretch, guys, then you can just make this block at the top higher. Or if it's too intense for you, you can just make it lower, or even just not have a block at all. So once you've found that stretch, you're just gonna stay in a passive stretch for 2 minutes. Just trying to relax, try and get deeper into that position. Then you're gonna start your PAILs and RAILs. Now the PAILs is gonna be pushing down into that block. You can start about 20% and ramp up to 80% or even your maximum safest effort. And then the RAILs is gonna be trying to lift off the block. And a true RAILs effort, you're not gonna actually be able to lift. So that's gonna help improve your passive shoulder flexion. Then to try and strengthen that passive range and make it active, then you're gonna come slightly out of your end range. So lower the block height, wherever it was, and do some lift-offs. So this is basically like similar to the RAILs, but because you're not in your end range, you actually are able to lift off. So from here, keeping my arm straight, I'm just gonna lift off the block, hover for a few seconds, and place back down. You wanna make it quite difficult so that you can only barely lift off so that you're actually training your end range. So if you're getting a really big lift off, just raise that block up and make it harder for yourself. Now in terms of the width, the closer you get, the harder it's gonna be. And just think about the positions that you need to train. So say for example, on your pull-ups, you wanna have your hands at a certain width. Then you can train shoulder flexion with that grip. Maybe on your jerk you have it wider, you can train at that width. Maybe handstands even narrower, you can train at that width. And as you get better and better flexion, then you can move your hands closer and closer together. So I hope that helps you guys to improve your overhead positions, whether that be for handstands, jerks, pull-ups, muscle-ups, whatever. And thanks for watching, and if you have any questions or comments, then please just message me or leave a comment and I'd be happy to help. Thank you.